Production by Liang Gu, author of Autumn Willow, Yu Dafu. 1. In a dark, medium-sized underground room, there were several beds set up horizontally and vertically. There is a small window on the north wall opposite the door, through which light shines in on a clear morning in mid-October. The sleeping face of a young man in his mid-20s was reflected on the bed under the small window. There was a tired look on this young man's face, and his sleeping face, which was originally bloodless, was even more frighteningly pale because of the poor lighting in the room. On his head was thick and dark hair. It was his only beauty, fluffy and scattered on a white western pillow. There were 2 beds near the door, with the bedding neatly folded. The owners of these 2 beds, who were used to getting up early every day, had gone somewhere. There are no mosquito nets on these 3 beds. There were 2 tables in the room, one was placed under the north wall, next to the bedside where the young man slept, and the other was placed next to the door. Spread out on the 2 tables were some soap boxes, mirrors, cigarette cans, and stationery. And several copies of Dingen's complete works, selected poems of the Tang dynasty, and so on. The table against the north wall was probably reserved for young people sleeping on the bed, because among the messy jars and boxes of books there was a red leather-bound foreign book and a light green diary. It gave off a strange light in that dark room. There are 2 rows of horizontal characters written on the diary, Diary of 1921, and Yu Dafu. The titles of the foreign books are The Earthly, Paradise, and by William Maris. There is only a small door facing south in this place. Outside the door is the eaves, and beyond the eaves is the patio. About half an hour later, a tall, muscular gentleman, about 45 or 66 years old, wearing a pair of dark glasses and a bald spot on his head, ran in, approached the young man's bedside and shouted, "Explain." Jifu looked at the refreshing blue sky, brushing his teeth while thinking about the adventure he and Wu Fengshe went to the office last night. After he washed his face and returned to his room to change into foreign clothes, Ming Xian was sitting on the table at the door of the room reading selected poems of the Tang dynasty. The hostess changed into a foreign suit. Then he said to Ming Xian. The young man who was sleeping on the bed opened half of his eyes and looked out the door. He felt that the sunlight was so strong that he could not open his eyes. Turning over, he hissed back to sleep. It was exactly 9:35 in the morning, in this small inn in a secluded alley. Now was the quietest time, so the young man had to covet his peaceful sleep. After hearing these words, the hostage sat up from his blue silk quilt. Putting on a long-sleeved robe he made while studying abroad, he ran out of the room and went to the kitchen behind to wash his face and brush his teeth. According to Jifu, this trend in the College of Law and Political Science is easy to solve. If a few troublemaking students are expelled and the governor or education director welcomes all principals and staff back to school, then everything will be fine. But this time the trend has been delayed for more than a week and still cannot be resolved. It's all because of the governor's lack of decision-making. Although he was so angry, at the same time he was hoping that this incident would be extended for a few more days. Because the School of Law and Politics is far outside the city, if the incident is resolved and he moves back to the school, he will have to go to the city to go to work during the day. It's not easy. Entering the city at night, because the city gates are closed early, makes it even more inconvenient to go in and out. The girl Haitang that Wu Fengshe introduced to him last night may not have a good face, but it's not easy. Entering the city at night, because the city gates are closed early, makes it even more inconvenient to go in and out. The girl Haitang that Wu Fengshe introduced to him last night may not have a good face, but she is always a woman. At present, the woman has been separated from her hostage for 2 or 3 months, and all she wants is a woman. It's enough to talk to her, and ask about beauty and ugliness. Moreover, the Haitang he saw last night seemed to be very loyal, and the hostage had already felt a little pity for her. If Haitang could treat him with all her heart, he would also do his best to repay her. The sun's rays coming in from the patio gradually shone into the basement, and the dust floating in the basement could be seen in the sunlight. Host. Where did you go last night? You haven't gotten up yet? The young man turned over, wiped his eyes, and yawned. While saying, Ming Xian. I'm really impatient to wait. We are here to teach, not to seek refuge. If I hang in the air like this for another 1 or 2 weeks, I'm afraid I will develop an extreme neurasthenia. I was gossiping at Wu Fengshe's house last night. I sat there until 12 o'clock and didn't come back. The governor said that some students who caused trouble should be expelled. What happened? I'm afraid it will be funny for a few more days. It's almost 10 o'clock, it's still early. Where were you last night? Oh. Ming Xian. You came so early. The hostage and Ming chatted for a while, then ran to the street to wander. 2. The autumn wind on the north bank of the Yangtze River is getting cooler day by day. After the turmoil at Hosei School was resolved, it has been almost a week since the hostages moved back to live on campus, and the students who caused the trouble have all been expelled. Principal Liu resigned because the warlord Li Mai refused to let him continue to be the leader of the education sector there, so he resigned for the sake of the future of the school. That day was Principal Liu's last day at school. Principal Liu has put everything in order since he arrived at this school. Not only the people in the educational circles of Place A admire him, but also the students who caused trouble this time also admire him in their hearts. The majority of students who are generally neutral will not come out to fight when a trend breaks out, but they all fear Principal Liu like a father and love him like a mother. As soon as they heard that he was going to resign, they all turned into lost sheep without a shepherd boy and didn't know what to do. In the past few days, the school's boarding dormitory has been like a heap of cold ashes. No one even raised his voice when he had time to talk. Most of the teaching staff are people hired by Principal Liu. After this turmoil and seeing Principal Liu again, it was all a bit sad. We can't resign because the successor principal is Su Mingxian, the most honest among our colleagues, but we all have no resolve in our hearts, and the separation is probably not far away. Principal Liu said a few simple words like this, and when you came down, you could hear a few crying sounds in the lecture hall. The hostage looked at Principal Liu's expressionless face and saw his calm and martyr attitude. He was pressed by the quiet air in the lecture hall, and he already had a sentimental feeling. When he heard the students crying secretly, he immediately felt his eyes sore. Before everyone could finish the meeting, the hostage ran back to the room alone. Principal Liu had a 2-hour class early that morning. He distributed the unfinished lecture notes to the students in classes 1 and 2. When he left the class, he said to the students. The day Principal Liu went to school, Jifu felt only a kind of sadness and anger in his heart, with nowhere to vent. So he took a half-day off in the second half of the day and ran into the city. He walked on the street for a while, but he always felt extremely bored. Unconsciously, he walked towards Golden Trout Alley where official prostitutes gathered. Go. When they arrived at the door of Liu Heben, when they were hesitating, they saw several men standing inside the door. But he shouted loudly and said. After saying this, a sad smile appeared on her face. The hostage suddenly felt that she was cute, so he said to her, Dash. After a few questions and answers like this, the hostess took the child out and looked at it once, and the wet nurse went to the back room. The back room turned out to be the wet nurse's bedroom. After a moment, Wu Fengshe came. A handsome gentleman of 32 years old with a slender figure. As soon as we saw him, we knew that he was a man of beauty in the world of flowers and willows. His handsome and wise face, wine-clearing clothes, and clear voice. There are many charms that attract people. The hostage glanced at him and felt that his family should not be able to win in Chinese society. As soon as Fengshe entered the hut where his hostage was staying, he asked. The hostage went to Shanghai Tang's house just now and Hai Tang treated him how he did. He was bored, so he recounted the story of how he came here. Fengshe smiled and said. The hostage sat for a while, chatted a few words, and then walked out. He walked south on the narrow street for a while to see that it was getting late. So I went to a halal restaurant to have dinner alone. Although this restaurant named Yang is not big in appearance, the daughter-in-law who works as a waiter is very handsome, so every time the hostage comes to the city, he always goes to the restaurant to eat. After the hostage sat down on the edge of the bed. The false mother asked him. After hearing this, the hostage thought about it again and felt that Haitang's attitude just now was indeed a sign of her stupidity, not a cold reception. Moreover, he also heard that she had few visitors recently, but he felt a sense of chivalry in his heart, so he swore an oath to his family. Explain. The false mother asked him. After hearing this, the hostage thought about it again and felt that Haitang's attitude just now was indeed a sign of her stupidity, not a cold reception. I had to run in immediately. Begonia's short fake mother came out smiling with a few wrinkles on her nose. The hostage entered the room and saw Hai Tang just having breakfast there. She held the rice bowl in her hands and stood up from the table. Her decorations were different today than last time. He had a braid on his head, and wore a blue satin cotton padded jacket, a green-gray bamboo cloth singlet, and a pair of Crab Lake crepe pants underneath. She had probably gotten up just now, and the blood on her face had not yet circulated, so she felt paler than last time. The newly combed shiny braids added to her pitiful look. The hostage approached her and asked her. As soon as the hostage burst into the store door, his quick eyes went to look for the wife, but I don't know where she went today, and she couldn't be found downstairs. As the hostage slowly walked upstairs, several waiters upstairs greeted him. He looked up and saw his wife at the door. The wife smiled at him, and the hostage blushed. Because he wore Western clothes, everyone in the store knew him. As soon as he went upstairs, several footmen asked him to go up to the small room in the corner. Firstly, I was still depressed this morning. Secondly, I went to see Hai Tang in the afternoon and felt that she was very neglected. The hostess always felt happy and unhappy in his heart. The woman who got that time smiled. Although he felt lighter, he still felt a little lonely. When he wrote an invitation to invite Wu Fengshe to come over for a drink, he was only thinking about the fun in overseas coffee shops. After saying these few words, the eyes of the students in classes 1 and 2 became red. Hai Tang just stood there and listened blankly as the hostage and her fake mother chatted. He neither interrupted nor glanced at his hostess. She closed her eyes that were hanging upside down and smoked a cigarette. Just at this time, a wet nurse who had grown obese came in carrying a 7 or 8-month-old baby. The hostage stood up from the bed and walked up to see the little baby. Hai Tang also came over. The hostage asked her, dash. When 10 o'clock struck, all the students in the school gathered in the lecture hall. Listen to Principal Lu's instructions. She shook her head and said. After she put away her rice bowl, she smiled slightly and said, dash. She only replied to him. The fake mother ran out of things to say, so she asked her team about how much business they had been doing recently, how much they would spend per month, and how Hai Tang didn't know how to entertain guests. He spoke intermittently. Jida originally didn't like the fake mother, but after hearing these words, he became even more unhappy. So he left her behind, approached Hai Tang, and said to Hai Tang. The fake mother brought a 3/4 gun to her hostage and asked her hostage to suck it. The hostage took it and said to her. The calm and open-minded Principal Lu did not change his usual attitude. He straightened his 5'8" body and spoke to the students in a loud voice like a bell. As he said this, the hostess reached out his hand and picked a handful on her face. Hai Tang slowly raised her dull eyes. He smiled slightly at the hostage, then reached out and squeezed the hostage's hand. The fake mother saw the two of them playing there very passionately, so she ran out. The hostage took Hai Tang's hand, went to bed with her, and fell asleep. The two of them faced outside and rested their heads on the quilt folded on the bed. The hostage glanced at Hai Tang. Her eyes were still staring blankly at the top of the bed. The hostage put his head on her chest, and she only smiled slightly. The hostage felt that he had nothing to say to her, so he asked her gently. The beginning and end of this trend. I think you all already know this and don't want me to say anything more. But I am here, and Li Mai always refuses to give up. Rather than asking Li Mai to destroy this school for my own sake, it would be better to sacrifice myself to preserve this school. When I am about to leave, 3 things will happen. I hope you guys can keep it safe in the future. The first thing is to pay attention to order. Lack of order is a common problem among us Chinese people. In the future, I hope that you can maintain order no matter what time you go. If order can be maintained, then anything can be done. The second is to take care of yourself. We in China do not pay much attention to sports, so most of the people will age before they get old and will not be able to achieve great things. In the future, I hope you can take care of your body and have a sound mind to have a sound place to rely on. Then there will be hope for China. The third is to respect knowledge. When we are angry. Although knowledge is useless and upright men are poisoned, at the end of the day, knowledge is our foundation. If the foundation is not solid, we will not be able to achieve great things or great achievements. Hostage. Although knowledge is useless and upright men are poisoned, at the end of the day, knowledge is our foundation. If the foundation is not solid, we will not be able to achieve great things or great achievements. Hostage. Why did you come here alone? Thanks. The treater is coming back soon. How many dishes will you order? A middle-aged man came and asked again. If we were in a foreign coffee shop, then I could pull the daughter-in-law over and hold her on my lap. I could also give her a few glasses of wine mouth to mouth, or I could touch her up and down. Alas, I was wrong. I shouldn't have been born in China. I'll tell you when the guests arrive. Begonia, what are you thinking about here? There is nothing. Is it your child? I've finished eating. Why doesn't Mr. Wu come today? We get up at this time every day, and there is no breakfast or lunch. For the sake of the school itself, I might as well resign. You should study hard from now on and don't let others say you are bad. That is the best way to show your love for me. Although I have resigned now, I still regard your honor and disgrace as my own. Lead the way. In Miss Hai Tang's room. Where did your sister go? How does your mother treat you? You are so bold, you dare to run into the office alone under the bright blue sky. That stupid girl Hai Tang is like this, and it's not a cold reception. Because she can't deal with customers, there are very few customers recently. Because I love her honesty, I introduced her to you. If you don't like her, I will go with you to find someone in another team. Did you have breakfast or lunch? You just eat your own food, there is no need to come and greet me. He still has something to do, so he always comes around at night. He lives in the city, I live outside the city. Of course I can't always come with him. Mr. Yu, Master Haitang is waiting for you. Why don't you always come? Mr. Wu comes every night. Have no idea. No, it belongs to my sister. If I want to save the world, I must first save individuals. Haitang has short wings and is unable to catch up with others. I'll just do my best for her. The hostage drank a few glasses of wine and complained a lot to Wu Fengshe. I'll just do my best for her. The hostage drank a few glasses of wine and complained a lot to Wu Fengshe. He was moved by his own sad and passionate tone, and shed a few tears of self-injury. After speaking, he loudly raised his voice. Said, "Poor dull Haitang, he is just like me." She was neither beautiful nor charming, so she ended up in poverty. Alas, I am not yet famous and you are not married, so I am pitiful and inferior to others. After thinking of this, the hostage suddenly slapped the table and shouted, "Haitang, Haitang, I will do my best for you from now on. I feel that I love you very much. Today, the people who bury flowers are laughing like crazy." Who knows who he was buried in? When it was time to light up the lanterns and after dinner, Jifu immediately wanted to go back to school, but after being persuaded by Fengshe several times, he went back to Luha's class. At that time, he was still a little drunk, so by the way Haitang and Fengshe's lover Hezhu and Hezhu's niece Bitao, an upright official. He said a lot of chivalrous words. Just like the martial arts singer in the theater, the hostess clapped his chest and shouted half-truthfully, "I am a good man who cares about justice over wealth, Haitang. You don't have to hurt yourself and be lonely. Tomorrow I will put up an advertisement for you and recruit some rich men to deal with you." After hearing this, Haitang also spat at him. Bitao, who was only 15 years old this year, was wearing a boy's long robe and mandarin jacket. Seeing the hostage's expression was funny, she ran up to him and called him, "Hey, are you crazy?" The hostess looked at the shape of the peach. Suddenly he felt Wu Qixing, whom he had not seen for 2 months. So he ran up behind her, laid his body on her back, and asked her to carry her to the bed to talk to Fengshe Hezhu. Tonight, Fengshe persuaded his hostage to Shanglu and ban Haitang. It turned out that they came here to relieve the hostage's anger during the day. So as soon as he entered the team, Fengshe and his hostage walked into Haitang's room. Fengshe's lover Hezhu and Hezhu's niece Bitao also ran over because Fengshe was there. Because Fengshe said that his hostage was too full after dinner tonight and could not digest. There he and Haitang Bitao performed a comical play about the righteous knight. The hostage lay on Bitao's back, and after asking Bitao to carry Bitao on the edge of the bed, he pulled Bitao and slept on this side of the cigarette tray. Opposite was Fengshe. He slept there on his side and burned cigarettes. Hezhu lay on Fengshe's body, talking to him quietly. After the hostess Labitao fell asleep, Bitao sat on him and asked about all kinds of irrelevant things. The hostage explained it to her seriously, and she listened carefully. After talking for a while, Fengshe and Hezhu's secret words stopped. After the hostage heard their secret words stop, he felt that he had said too much, so he glanced at Hezhu opposite him. Hezhu was also staring blankly at him and Bitao when their eyes came into contact, and Hezhu burst into laughter. This was Hezhu's unique love and affection, and her hostage blushed when she laughed. Hezhu smiled and said to the interrogator, "You seem to be two good brothers. Mr. Yu, you just become my nephew." The hostage raised his head and said to Haitang, who was sitting blankly on the chair in front of the bed, "Haitang, Hezhu wants to recognize me as his nephew. Would you like her to be your aunt?" After hearing this, Haitang only smiled slightly, walked to the edge of the bed and sat down. "Would you like her to be your aunt?" After hearing this, Haitang only smiled slightly, walked to the edge of the bed and sat down. The hostage sat in Haitang's room that night until 12 o'clock, and then came out from one soft and bright prostitute's room. When he walked into the dark and deserted street outside, the hostage suddenly had a cold convulsion. He raised his head and looked at the sky. From the narrow street, I could only see a long and narrow stretch of the bottomless sky, with a few floating stars, reflected high in the clear night air. A lonely sadness after joy suddenly occupied the hostage's heart. Fengshe wanted to keep his hostage in the city, but he refused no matter what. After asking Fengshe for a ticket to leave the city, the hostage took a rickshaw and ran to the north gate from the street where no one slept. The policeman guarding the city gate saw the hostage's posture in the dress and silently opened the door for him. The hostage got out of the car and walked out of the city gate, stumbling back and forth on an uneven country road as he walked back to school. All around him was the dark night air. Looking up, I could only see a bay of endless blue and black blue sky, and a few bright and dying autumn stars. A black shadow of the city wall was entrenched above the moat on his right hand like a monster, and several faint dog barks came from far away, as if they were singing a funeral dirge under the city. The hostage returned to the school and opened the door softly. When I went into my room, lit a candle, changed my clothes and went to bed, I could already hear the crowing of chickens in the distance. 3. Chioguang outside City A is old. In Linghu Park near Hosei School. The desolate scene withered into pieces, the willow and elm trees beside the road, in the cold morning, although there is no breeze, the rustling yellow leaves are flying down. On a slightly cold morning, I felt fond of the warm and soft heavy quilt. Naturally good and evil. In cooperation with the hostages' propaganda, the recent trend of loitering has become popular among the faculty and staff of the Legal and Political College in A. In cooperation with the hostages' propaganda, the recent trend of loitering has become popular among the faculty and staff of the Legal and Political College in A. Saying this, the hostage put his hands and body on Bitao's shoulders. Bitao ducked to the left, but the hostage pressed an empty button. Falling on Shuha's back, everyone laughed. Bitao laughed so hard that she couldn't sit still, so she stood up and ran away. The hostage chased her twice before catching her. Falling on Shuha's back, everyone laughed. Bitao laughed so hard that she couldn't sit still, so she stood up and ran away. The hostage chased her twice before catching her. After holding one of her hands, the hostage dragged her onto the bed, and the two bodies fell asleep on the side where the cigarette tray was stacked. The hostage said to her gently. These few words made Ni Longan's heart beat, and a smile appeared on his long, yellow face and he said, dash. After this incident, the air in the school became very gray. When faculty and staff meet students, they always feel oppressed. The hostage had no choice but to bring her little hand to her mouth, took a bite, and said to her, dash. The hostage continued. The hostage answered him. The hostage and Ni Wu arrived at Haitong's room. There was already a cigarette tray placed on her bed. The three of them burned cigarettes on the bed for a while, and Uncle Cheng also came. Shuha is about 30 years old. He is also a slender man with a few red spots on his face. He wears a pair of myopic glasses and has a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. Because he was the guest of He Zhu's niece Bitao, an upright official, everyone called him niece-in-law. It turns out that this dear and the most popular girl in the class are He Zhu. Next is Bitao, but the redness of Bitao comes only from the lotus beads. The hostage looked at He Zhu's handsome face. She has a description that looks like a smile but not a smile, a strong flesh color with some red and black, and a figure that is neither long nor short. Although he loves her in his heart, he is too red, so his spirit of robbing the rich and giving to the poor will never allow him to be pregnant with He Zhu. Have a good impression. Wu Fengshe was a regular customer of He Zhu when he was humble. It has been 5 or 6 years since he came in and out. Not only did He Zhu have special feelings for him, but the masters of Lu and the class also had some respect for him. It has been 5 or 6 years since he came in and out. Not only did He Zhu have special feelings for him, but the masters of Lu and the class also had some respect for him. So He Zhu is the most popular girl in Lu He's class, and Wu Fengshe is the most powerful prostitute in Lu He's class. This is the second reason. The nicknames of Lu and the class are all drawn up with He Zhu and Fengshe as the center points. This is the origin of Cheng Shu's nickname niece-in-law. After hearing this, the hostage sighed deeply, smiled sadly, and said to Ming Xian. The hostage listened to Su Mingxian's words. Unknowingly, he spread the gospel of wandering to Ni Longan, and urged him to go to Luha Ban to find out about Suiyun. After hearing this, Ni Longan pretended to be frightened and said to the interrogator, dash. After hearing her childlike voice, the hostage was even more reluctant to let her go. Then he pulled her with his hand and said, Bitao, come down and let He Zhu go alone. Come down and go to your house with me. When Jifu was in class, he felt that the students' eyes were saying, are you still here? We don't pity you anymore, are you leaving too? Therefore, as soon as Jifu heard the bell ringing for class, he always felt that he was delaying progress, and his courageous thoughts before the trend became an objection. There were days when he was actually afraid of meeting the students. As soon as he got out of class, he felt like someone who had been released from a kind of hard labor. I felt a little light, but when I thought about going to class again tomorrow and seeing the unconcerned faces of those students, I felt depressed. At this time, he had to run into the city, or go to the Jiamen Hall named Yang to get drunk and have a good meal, or go to Haitong's place to spend the middle of the night. So the trend ended, and after moving into the school for the second time, Jifu always had to go to the city every day. Looking at his colleagues, he felt that they were suffering the same mental pain as him. After Su Mingxian walked away, the hostage said softly to Longan. The next day is Saturday and there are no classes in the afternoon. After the hostage finished his lunch, he ran into Long An's room and said quietly to Long An. Qing Shuhe smiled and asked Bitao. After Qing Shuhe arrived, Feng Shi ordered Haitang to set up the table to play cards. While setting the table, suddenly there was a burst of shouting outside the door, and Bai Tao jumped into Haitang's room. As soon as Bai Tao jumped out, her hostage also ran over and hugged her tightly. Carrying her to the bed step by step, the hostage pushed Bitao onto Qing Shuhe and said. Bitao said in the voice of a child that had not yet become dull, "Oh, are you here? Please go sit down first. We will go out in the first spring and come back soon." Bitao's eyes were bare, her mouth was pointed, and she pretended to be angry and replied forcefully, "Dash." Bitao also stretched out a small hand to squeeze the hostage's hand and said, "Dash." At this time, Zhifu, Wu Fengshi, and Ni Longan slowly walked down the long street. At the entrance of Qianqian Lane, they looked around and then hurried in. They took 2 steps into the alley. Duo 2 met a speeding rickshaw. The hostage raised his head and saw that it was Bitao and Hezhu. Bitao was wearing a silver-gray satin robe, a black iron satin vest, and a round melon pipe hat tilted to one side, sitting on Hezhu's body. Her little face, which is neither rectangular nor square, often has a layer of red and white floating on it, and a pair of big, piercing eyes stare at passers-by like an owl in the dark night. The hostage was because she was still young and naive. Secondly, because she looked like Wu Qixing in some places, I originally liked her even more than Haitang. When I met her in this place, I felt even more in love with her when I saw her like this, so I rushed over and grabbed her. The rickshaw stopped and shouted, "Dash." The table is set, Wu Fengshi, and I Longan. Uncle Cheng took a seat at the table. The hostage originally didn't like playing cards and wanted to chat with Bitao tonight, so he asked Haitang to play for him. One day, when Zhifu, Ni Longan, and Su Mingxian were talking about the romantic history of Tokyo, the loyal Su Mingxian blushed and sighed, "Dash." At 6 o'clock in the afternoon during the short winter days, the streets of City A were completely transformed into a night scene. On the busiest street, the shops on both sides were lit with electric lights. The shopkeeper chewed the remaining grains after the meal and stood blankly around the counter. Watch the passers-by there. When a woman passed by, they started talking and laughing. People who came to the provincial capital for the first time from the countryside held a pipe in their hand and slowly walked around the 4 to 5 foot wide street looking east and west. The rickshaw driver rang the bell after bell after bell. While shouting loudly to give way and cursing, he ran as fast as he could. If the people in the car are women or prostitutes, they will scream louder and run faster. It is pitiful for their perverted sexual desires. In addition to being truly satisfied at this moment, I probably only vent my anger to prostitutes who have a lot of viruses. In the narrow brothel alley, rickshaws were piled up at this time, showing a lively scene in the yellow-gray light. After the messenger from the restaurant came with a small note, those living Buddhas who reconciled sexual desire. Just pretend to be brilliant, get on the rickshaw and run away like flying. On the streets with restaurants, there are a few chaotic rickshaws parked on both sides. The air is filled with the smell of fried fish, luring the casual middle class to drink and prostitute. There are several restaurant windows, reflecting the shadows of several men and women, the sad sound of harp strings and the crisp sound of flesh spread into the cold, gray air outside. A group of proletarian carnal pursuers stood underneath, smelling the fragrance across the water. There were also those who stood with serious expressions and tasted the sound of flesh. There are also those who just scream in despair and walk away slowly. It turns out that Su Mingxian took over as Principal Lu, and his colleagues were all better than him as Zhao Kuangyin. They called this wave of rebellion the Qin Xiao Mutiny. Therefore, the hostage called Su Mingxian's old friend the Queen. After the 4 of them sat down, the hostage walked up to Bai Tao, who was sitting behind Uncle He, and said softly, "Dash. Master Jean. In Luha class, I also have a woman there. I'll take you for a walk sometime. We can also find out about Queen Suayan. Then come back quickly, I have something important to tell you." Is he Zhu back? You are so bold. I don't have to do it as a teacher, but I don't want my freedom to be restricted by morality. Students can have sex, but why can't teachers do it? If you investigate those opposition parties who want to attack us on moral grounds carefully, I'm afraid they are doing even more obscene things there. The first spring. Bitao, are you still angry with me? Bitao, where are you going? I'm afraid they are doing even more obscene things there. The first spring. Bitao, are you still angry with me? Bitao, where are you going? Bitao, are you really angry or are you pretending? What if it's really like that? Really? Warm. Really, it's up to you how you do it to me. Who called it? There is still a silk robe as a gift, so I should pity Fan Shuhan. I don't know that the world's scholars still look at it as a commoner. I'm sorry, you go ahead and I'll be back. Please wait for 15 minutes at most. Uncle He, Jing Bitao is yours after all. There is still a silk robe as a gift, so I should pity Fan Shuhan. I don't know that the world's scholars still look at it as a commoner. I'm sorry, you go ahead and I'll be back. Please wait for 15 minutes at most. Uncle He, Jing Bitao is yours after all. I bumped into her on the road just now and asked her to come back, but she refused. Now as soon as you get here. You see, she jumped back right away. You are so brave. What will you do if you are caught by a student? Where did you get out? But it should always be more secretive. I have agreed to play cards for her in Haitang's room tonight, and you can be considered a match. One is Wu Fengshe. One is Fengshe's friend, Qing Shuhe, whom we call Nisin-Law. Do you recognize him? Now I'm going into the city and waiting for you at Fengshe's house. After you have dinner, I'll come into the city right away. The gatherings and separations of life are so strange. 5 or 6 years ago, I was having a wild time. There is a prostitute whom I am very close to, and I unexpectedly met her at a friend's table yesterday. The bad prostitute was the first prosperous brothel in land A 5 or 6 years ago, but then she ran away with a pretty boy and disappeared. There is a prostitute whom I am very close to, and I unexpectedly met her at a friend's table yesterday. The bad prostitute was the first prosperous brothel in land A 5 or 6 years ago, but then she ran away with a pretty boy and disappeared. Yesterday at the banquet, I suddenly saw her haggard expression. I was surprised. She said that the pretty girl was dead, and now she changed her name to Tsueyin, and she was still picking up customers in Luha class. She looked at my coarse clothes and seemed to be worried about me, and asked me how I was doing now. I said deliberately dejectedly. I am also very depressed. Not surprisingly, she shed a few tears of sympathy for me and taught me to hang out at her place when I had free time. I don't know. Is it true? Then I love you to death. Not surprisingly, she shed a few tears of sympathy for me and taught me to hang out at her place when I had free time. I don't know. Is it true? Then I love you to death. After saying this, the hostage hugged her tightly and brought his mouth close to Bitao's face. After taking a hard bite, 2 tears suddenly fell on his face. Bitao was bitten by him and wanted to scream loudly, but when she looked at him, she saw that her flexible eyes held a bottle of water and 2 tears were already flowing on her cheeks. Instead, she was surprised. I was stunned. The hostage stared at her blankly for a moment, then called her softly, Bitao, I have a lot to say to you, but I always feel like I can't say it. After another pause, the hostage said to her quietly. My father died when I was 3 years old. At that time, our family had no money and was very poor. I was studying in the study room, and because my husband hurt me very much, I was often bullied by my classmates. I didn't have the strength to beat them, so after being bullied by them, I would always cry alone. If I go and tell sir, then sir, I must punish them. Okay, if you go and tell me once, they will definitely bully me even more severely next time. If I tell my mother, my poor mother, who is already sad, will always cry with us. I was bullied for this. I can only swallow my tears alone. Since then, I have become a cowardly, hopeless, and powerless person day by day. When I was 12 years old, I met the daughter of our neighbor. I loved her very much, but I can only swallow my tears alone. Since then, I have become a cowardly, hopeless, and powerless person day by day. When I was 12 years old, I met the daughter of our neighbor. I loved her very much, but I was scared. I can only look at her shadow from a distance, because as soon as she comes close to me, I feel as sad as death. I thought about her every day and every night for 2 years, but I never saw her face to face. I can only look at her shadow from a distance, because as soon as she comes close to me, I feel as sad as death. I thought about her every day and every night for 2 years, but I never saw her face to face. When talking to her, needless to say, she is gone. Do you think it is strange? Later, she got close to one of my schoolmates. Everyone said bad things about her, and I often defended her in my heart. Now she is married to another man, and I heard that she has given birth to 3 or 4 children. When I entered middle school at the age of 14, I was bullied by my classmates again. When I was 18 years old, I went to Japan with my brother and just ran around for 7 or 8 years. They bullied me even more. It wasn't until this fall that I dragged this one back to China, and lo and behold, my half-dead body came back to China. In Shanghai, I met a friend by accident. His surname is also Wu. His appearance is not much different from yours, and he is even younger than you. He was sick, and his face was very pale, but it was also beautiful, like transparent white glass. When he speaks, his voice is the same as yours. I spent half a month in Shanghai with him. Only then did I realize that I would miss him in the future. But after living with him for only a few days, my friends here sent telegrams urging me to come here, so I had to separate from him. The night I boarded the boat, when he came to see me off, guess what, the two of us. I hugged her like this and cried for half the night. I've been here for more than 2 months, and I'm very busy and the things I do are boring. I haven't written to him yet. Now that the weather is getting colder, I'm afraid that his illness will get worse again. Mr. Wu introduced it to me half a month ago. I just recognized Haitang in you. Haitang is not beautiful, she is stupid, and she has no guests. Although I feel sorry for her and want to help her, I don't have a lot of money to redeem her. You are so good, so cute, I saw you. It's like seeing my friend named Wu, but you are not mine. Because you and Haitang are in the same team, I can't come to you every day to talk to you, and you are very busy. Even if I come here, it's not easy for me to meet you often. It's rare for me to meet you today. You are so angry again. Do you think I feel uncomfortable? The hostage spoke in a long and melodious way, which made Bai Tao close her eyes. Seeing her childlike sad look, the hostage felt even more loved in his heart, and he tried his best again. Hug him tightly. When the hostage was about to put his mouth on her face, 4 people were sitting playing cards. Suddenly he shouted. Bai Tao and Jifu also jumped out of the big bed at the same time and approached the card table. It turned out that Uncle Cheng had won a triple deck of cards, and everyone was cheering. Not long after, Hezhu came back. Wu Fengshe asked her to fight for him, and he and his husband went to the cigarette shop and fell asleep. The hostage suddenly remembered that Zueyun Su Mingxian had mentioned, and asked. Not long after, Hezhu came back. Wu Fengshe asked her to fight for him, and he and his husband went to the cigarette shop and fell asleep. The hostage suddenly remembered that Zueyun Su Mingxian had mentioned, and asked. Fengshe, there is Zueyun in this team, do you know him? Wu Fengshe was stunned for a moment and said. I plan to call her over for Longan. Excellent, excellent. Wu Fengshe ordered Haitang's fake mother to invite Miss Zueyun over. Zueyun was half old, with a sallow face and a haggard appearance, which made it easy to guess her past romantic history. Slender, the body is very thin. There are often 2 clear pools of clear water floating in a pair of narrow eyes. Her makeup is also very sloppy. There are a few scattered hair hanging on her forehead. She is wearing a sky blue satin cotton jacket. The pattern is no longer popular. It's a pair of black satin pants. After she entered Haitang's room, the hostage asked Bai Tao to take the place of cards for Longan, and he made an introduction and asked Longan and Zueyun to lie down on the cigarette shop and sleep. Jifu chatted with Zueyun, Longan and Fengshe for a few words, then walked behind Bai Tao to watch her play cards. Haitang's fake mother brought a chair for him to sit on. The hostess sat down and looked at it for a while, then gradually leaned over. After 15 or 6 minutes, he sat on the same chair as Bai Tao. He put one hand around Bai Tao's waist and helped her hold the cards with one hand. When she wasn't holding the cards, the hostage would put his hand on her body. Bai Tao just pretended not to know and remained silent. The card game lasted until 11 o'clock, and no one wanted to continue playing. After the meal was over and a table of wine and food was set, they sat down to eat. Because Jifu had a conversation with Bai Tao today, he felt desolate and happy at the same time, so he started drinking hard. This is strange. The more he drank tonight, the more alert he felt. He couldn't get drunk no matter what. Everyone after a few drinks, I started playing guessing games. Today the hostage is the host. So the hostage had to clear the level first. Bai Tao called for 3 punches, but lost 3 punches. Seeing that she didn't know how to drink, the hostage drank 2 drinks for her. Haitang lost 2 punches, and her hostage gave her a glass of wine instead. When they were almost done drinking, the hostage asked for porridge. Everyone ate 1 or 2 bowls of rice porridge. The banquet was dispersed. Lying on the bed next to the cigarette tray and taking 2 puffs of cigarette, the hostage said. Today Longan meets Zueyun for the first time. We should go to Zueyun's room and sit for a while. Everyone agreed and went to Zueyun's room together. After chatting for a while, Uncle Cheng left. Jifu and Longan. When Fengshe was about to leave, Hezhu's fake mother suddenly came and said to her husband. Master Yu, I have something to discuss with you. Please come to Miss Shanghai Tang's room. The hostage was confused, so he followed her into Haitang's room. As soon as the hostage entered the room, Haitang's fake mother avoided her. Hezhu's fake mother smiled at first and then slowly said to her husband. Mr. Yu, I have something to tell you tonight. I wonder if you are willing to give me a favor? Say it. Haju's fake mother smiled at first and then slowly said to her husband. Mr. Yu, I have something to tell you tonight. I wonder if you are willing to give me a favor? Say it. I want to be your matchmaker and ask you to stay here tonight. The hostage was surprised and made no reply. She smiled and said. You have already agreed, thank you very much. After hearing this, Haitang's fake mother also came out and hurriedly said to her husband. Mr. Yu, thank you. I'll go and tell Mr. and Mr. Wu, and ask them to go back first. The hostage heard this. Watch her walk out the door in 3 steps. I felt unhappy in my heart. The hostage asked him to wait, but she went out as if he didn't hear him. The hostage stood up and wanted to chase him out, but was held back by Haju's fake mother and said, Why do you have to go out? Just let them go back. The hostess became anxious, he felt embarrassed if he wanted to go out, and felt bad if he couldn't. When he was depressed, Longan walked in with Feng Shi. Feng Shishao asked his husband slightly. Are you staying here tonight? The hostage blushed with anxiety, and replied giggling. What are those words? I must go back. Haju's fake mother restrained the hostage and said, Master Yu, didn't you promise me? Why change your mind again? The hostage said giggling again, What words, I... How could I agree to your coming? Longan turned pale and ran to the hostage. He said to his hostage in Japanese. Host, you and I are closely related. There is no way you should spend the night here tonight. Firstly, our opposition party is terrible. Secondly, in places like this, it is always better not to stay overnight, so as not to make others laugh. You're lustful. The hostage heard this. Just like waking up from a big dream, he was determined to go back, and said to Feng Shi in English. This is an insult. They look down upon me too much. Do I still love a girl like Haitang because of her beauty? After hearing this, Feng Shi said kindly to his interrogator. That's not the case. Everyone knows that you feel pity for Haitang. It's no big problem if you want to stay overnight. If you don't want to, you can go back with us. Longan said to the hostage again in Japanese, I have taken the responsibility to persuade you. Please come back with me no matter what. Haitang's fake mother had already seen Longan's appearance, so she ran out and called Suiyun over, and asked Suiyun to call Longan away. After Longan and Suiyun ran out, the hostage felt insulted by being suspected of being a lecher, but he also felt a little curious. I want to see the body of a Chinese prostitute. Just when he was blushing and undecided, Longan ran in again. At this moment, Longan changed his attitude. The hostage raised his eyes to look at him. When I asked him about his strategy with his eyes, he said, It's up to you to decide whether to stay or not. But if you want to spend the night here, you must keep it a secret. The hostage also vaguely agreed, I am only afraid of 2 things. The first is that I am afraid of illness, and the second is that I am afraid of future entanglements. But if you want to spend the night here, you must keep it a secret. The hostage also vaguely agreed, I am only afraid of 2 things. The first is that I am afraid of illness, and the second is that I am afraid of future entanglements. Longan replied in Japanese again. She doesn't dare to take advantage of the situation. Just pay her 20 yuan when you leave tomorrow. You don't have to agree to whatever she wants you to buy in the future. The hostage blushed and lost his mind. When he was thinking hesitantly, Haju's fake mother, Haitang's fake mother and Suiyun pulled Feng Shi Longan out. At the same time, Haitang walked into the room, with a loyal smile on his face, and sat down facing his hostage. 4. Only the hostage Haitang and his wife were left in Haitang's room. The hostage was already disturbed by them because of the issue of his stay and whereabouts, so he was unwilling to speak. The dull Haitang just sat there blankly without saying a word. The hostage only heard a few footsteps outside the room and a few calls from the door. Suppressed by the silent air, the hostage's mind gradually calmed down. There was a pause. Haitang's fake mother came into the room and gently confronted her husband. Master Yu, I'm very sorry. There is a guest from Haitang playing cards in the next room. Please wait for a while until he goes to sleep. The hostage sat in silence for 30 minutes, feeling bored. He ordered Haitang's false mother to get opium smoke to burn. While he was burning opium cigarettes alone, Haitang went out. It burned again and again, but Jihu couldn't burn it well after all. He finally managed to take a sip. He ordered Haitang's false mother to get opium smoke to burn. While he was burning opium cigarettes alone, Haitang went out. It burned again and again, but Jihu couldn't burn it well after all. He finally managed to take a sip. After inhaling, Haitang ran in and said quietly to the fake mother. The hostage looked at Haitang. Sitting there blankly, he felt unhappy in his heart and ran up to her and said something. He just took off his clothes and went to sleep alone. Haitang just didn't come to sleep. After sitting for a while, she took out a set of dominoes, as if she was doing divination there. The hostage saw this stupid superstition of hers and felt angry and amused at the same time. The hostage was originally a timid and vain person. After hearing this, he deliberately pretended to be indifferent and said, dash. When the hostess thought this, he suddenly felt pity for her. Put away the cigarette tray. After the bedding was laid out, the fake mother closed the door and went out. With this thought in his mind, the hostage turned around and looked at Haitang. At this time, Haitang was still sleeping there with her eyes open facing the sky. The hostage felt his face turn red and smiled at her. He pinned her 2 hands down. She had already understood Jifu's thoughts and moved her body slightly. The false mother urged. He decided to spend the night with her here tonight and would never ravage her body. After half an hour, she also took off her clothes and went to sleep. After the hostage let her sleep well, he used a towel to wrap around her neck, caressed her once, and then told her to sleep. But I turned my head away. After 30 minutes, Jifu felt that his family was very noble, so he wanted to sleep well all night like this and never violate her body. But the more he thought about it, the more he couldn't sleep. After a while, a conflict arose in his heart. Who knows that I am such a noble person? If I tell anyone about this, no one outside will believe it. That idiot Haitang, you pity her, how can she understand your heart? Just be a common person. She probably didn't want to, otherwise why would she be so unwilling to sleep? Pity your skinny life. This skinny career. I am really a beast that uses money to ravage people. He went. Master Yu, please go to sleep. It doesn't matter, there's nothing wrong with sleeping late. He was originally a perverted hostage. And having been through the sea before, he felt that Haitang's body definitely didn't look like a prostitute. Her face was still staring upward as if she had no nerves. But then her eyes suddenly opened and closed several times in succession, and she took a few breaths. By then the window was already dimly lit. 5. After a long period of dry weather, it suddenly started to rain lightly. The gray-black sky gave off a wintry atmosphere. When the north wind blows on the power lines in the air, the whining sound pierces people's hearts. The poor people without cotton-padded clothes. The time has come when I have to feel depressed again. Ever since he spent the night at Haitang's place, the hostage felt that things at school were becoming more and more boring. On the one hand, because she was afraid that people would suspect her of being a pervert, she didn't want to go to Luha class anymore, and she was also afraid of the pure Bitao. After seeing him, he looked down upon him even more, so he, like the criminals, had to live in seclusion in his prison-like room for several days. After seeing him, he looked down upon him even more, so he, like the criminals, had to live in seclusion in his prison-like room for several days. That afternoon, the weather suddenly became brighter, and the long blue sky was still as blue and green as the autumn sky. He looked out the window at the warm winter day. I felt like I had to go out once. But once he entered the city, he was weak-willed and had to go to Money Alley. While he was thinking boredly, he suddenly heard a few business cards coming in from the concierge. They turned out to be students from the industrial school and the number 1 middle school in the city. They were publishing a literary magazine for 10 days. They had written to the hostage twice a few days ago. As soon as the hostage saw their business cards, he felt that he was bored now and could use some entertainment, so he asked the concierge to invite them in quickly. They turned out to be students from the industrial school and the number 1 middle school in the city. They were publishing a literary magazine for 10 days. They had written to the hostage twice a few days ago. As soon as the hostage saw their business cards, he felt that he was bored now and could use some entertainment, so he asked the concierge to invite them in quickly. After thinking about it like this, he regretted that his youth was wasted in a ruthless foreign country. In the past few days, the Huayang Charity Relief Association held an entertainment party to collect donations. When the hostess accompanied Haitang down from the restaurant, I already felt a little drowsy, and I walked around the venue with Haitang randomly. I felt tired, so I said to Haitang. The hostage sent her to the car, and the family hired a rickshaw to take her to Qianqian Lane. As soon as he arrived in Haitang's room, he felt sleepy. I chatted a few words. He fell asleep on the begonia bed with his clothes on. The hostage replied. Because the lonely feeling just now had not disappeared, and he met Bai Tao again, Jifu felt a special sadness in his heart, so he drank a few more glasses of wine. After eating, Bai Tao said she wanted to go back. The hostage couldn't keep her, so he had to let her go. The hostess heard that Bai Tao had gone to the entertainment fair, so he also wanted to see the excitement, so he said to Haitang. The hostage walked into the entertainment venue and met many men and women, and suddenly felt sad and lonely in his heart. When he walked to the sales floor of each girl's school, he saw one of his students talking to a girl from a good family. He stood blankly for a moment, then walked away immediately, but he was saying in his heart, Haitang likes it very much. Then I combed my hair and powdered my hair and got ready. On the other hand, the fake mother made a few bowls of dishes to treat her husband to dinner. After the hostage finished his supper, he and Haitang agreed to meet in the left corridor of the old theater at the entertainment fair, and left alone first. On the other hand, the fake mother made a few bowls of dishes to treat her husband to dinner. After the hostage finished his supper, he and Haitang agreed to meet in the left corridor of the old theater at the entertainment fair, and left alone first. They couldn't hear clearly, so the hostage asked them to leave the theater. People watching the show around the hostage. That's right. They and the hostage looked at them sideways. The hostage bowed his head and hurriedly ran out of the crowd. As soon as he ran into the spacious garden, he raised his head and looked at the cold blue sky. There was a red electric light shining in the air. He turned his head towards the sky. After taking a deep breath, Haitang and Bitao slowly followed him. Haitang said with a cold smile, Girls' school singing is also a kind of entertainment in the entertainment fair. Bitao, who is very young and likes to be in the limelight, must be very enthusiastic about it. In the bright electric light, among the noisy men and women, he was alone and hurting himself. After sitting in the begonia room for a while, it was already time to turn on the lamp. When her husband asked Bitao if she was at home, Haitang's fake mother said, It turns out that there are two groups studying literature and art in City A. One is a group of the young people who came just now, and the other is a group of several students who were hostages and a few people who have graduated from school and are working in society. The former specializes in the study of literature and art, while the latter is in the nature of promoting cultural undertakings. Due to school connections and personal interests, Jifu had more opportunities to come into contact with the latter's group, so their group secretly regarded Jifu as a mentor. Recently, the hostage was the result of his debauchery. He hadn't kept their group in mind for a long time. He just met those young students from the industrial and number 1 middle schools. He hadn't kept their group in mind for a long time. He just met those young students from the industrial and number 1 middle schools. He felt a little disrespectful towards that group, so he planned to go to the city to see them. In fact, this is just an excuse for him to deceive himself. In his hazy consciousness, he had long wanted to see Bitao and Haitang. When he arrived in the city, he went to their group's headquarters, the new culture bookstore attached to a higher elementary school, and sat for a while. Then he naturally walked to Money Alley. Several young people. They were all very energetic. After listening to their angry conversations, the hostess felt very ashamed. Seeing the way they looked up, the hostage really wanted to kneel down and repent to them. His sad feelings conquered all his emotions for a while. He felt that he was sitting on a half-broken ship, drifting in the sea at dusk, with only black clouds and big waves in front of him, and death on the other side of the sea. Although he was thinking this in his heart, he put on a serious look on his face and talked with them about various issues in literature, art and society. After talking for an hour, they went. The hostage always felt bored, so he changed his clothes and ran into the city. He seemed to be saying in his heart. He first went to the girls' school singing theater to see it, but Bitao was nowhere to be seen. His loneliness took another level. He slowly walked to the left side of the old theater and looked around. He saw that Haitang had not arrived yet. He pushed forward his seat and sat down to listen to a play. The person singing on the stage was Cheong Lin Banquet. He saw Fan named Fan. Someone was drunk, and when the ghost came out, he laughed unconsciously. I think the Chinese people's mysterious thoughts are more practical than the Western ones. While he was looking at it, he felt someone tap him on his shoulder. He looked back and saw Bitao and Haitang standing behind him and smiling at him. I think the Chinese people's mysterious thoughts are more practical than the Western ones. While he was looking at it, he felt someone tap him on his shoulder. He looked back and saw Bitao and Haitang standing behind him and smiling at him. He immediately stood up and asked them, Dash. After the three of them sat down in the banquet building, Jifu peeked at Bitao's face several times, because this was the first time that Jifu had met Bitao since he spent the night at Haitang's place, and he was afraid that Bitao would treat him badly. After the three of them sat down in the banquet building, Jifu peeked at Bitao's face several times, because this was the first time that Jifu had met Bitao since he spent the night at Haitang's place, and he was afraid that Bitao would treat him badly. Change your attitude once upon a time. But Bitao was still like a child and was very friendly with him. He looked at Bitao's innocent innocence and felt a sense of disappointment and shame at the same time. Then I'll go out with you, and you can come to our house to sit for a while. That's great. I was just going to go have a drink with you. Bitao and I haven't eaten yet. Young men and women, the time to be happy is now. You should do your best to find happiness. What is life worth? If you don't seek some happiness in your youth, What else will you have? I was just going to go have a drink with you. Bitao and I haven't eaten yet. Young men and women, the time to be happy is now. You should do your best to find happiness. What is life worth? You young men and women who are dreaming, may God fulfill your wishes. I am half old and my time has passed. I hope you are all well, beautiful, and married. Unfortunate things, unattractive people, loneliness, and boredom are all burdened on me, and I am willing to bear them for you. Anyway, I have no hope. Now that the old man has returned, those warblers and swallows will all avoid me at a distance. She went to the entertainment fair to sing. Go back to where? Go out of the city. I shouldn't treat a person with such innocent thoughts like a villain. You take a stroll here. I want to go home first. You pure young people. Why do you bother to come to me? Do you think I am your guide? You are wrong. You are wrong. What knowledge do I have? What do I know? Ah, if you know my content. If they knew about my obscene sexual fetishes, I'm afraid everyone would come and beat me and kill me. I am a rebel who violates morality, I am an intellectual wearing a mask, I am a beast in clothes. When did you come? I'll take you to the entertainment fair tonight. The hostage woke up. It was already 11:10. The fake mother asked him if he wanted anything to eat. He also felt a little hungry, so he asked her to order 2 bowls of shredded chicken noodles. The hostage saw that it was very dark outside and was a little scared of people running out of the city alone, so he listened to the fake mother and stayed at Haitang's place for the night again. 6. The winter night at the prostitute's house gradually got darker. The hostage ate some noodles, chatted a few words, and sat across from Haitang playing dominoes. Suddenly he heard a burst of laughter and the sound of firecrackers coming from the back room. The hostage was surprised and asked what it was. Haitang said quietly, "Today is Juhua's birthday, and her master sets off firecrackers for her." After the hostage put on his clothes, he asked Haitang. "Today is Juhua's birthday, and her master sets off firecrackers for her." After the hostage put on his clothes, he asked Haitang. The hostage left the fake mother and things behind, and ran to Tsueyun's room to take a look. The rafters in her room were already on fire. When it collapsed, the box and utensils were all on fire. The hostage had no choice but to run out empty-handed, and looked for Tsueyun again, but could not find her. The hostage ran to Bai Tao's room and saw 4 men sitting in her room and said, "Dash." After hearing this, the hostage realized that this was the person waiting for him, and that the little baby was his and Haitang's offspring. The hostage looked at the man and felt that his appearance was very despicable. When he thought of his union with Haitang, he felt cold and convulsed. He shook his head, glanced at Ducheng behind Haitang's back with a chuckle, and left silently. The hostage heard this. Looking at Haitang's sad face, I felt sad for Haitang. The hostage came back to the room with the false mother to move the things for the second time. By then, the room was already tightly packed with black smoke. Looking at Haitang's sad face, I felt sad for Haitang. The hostage came back to the room with the false mother to move the things for the second time. By then, the room was already tightly packed with black smoke. When the hostage and the fake mother came out after carrying the things for the second time, they suddenly met Tsueyun outside the door. She let her hair down and cried. The interrogator asked her, "How was it?" She cried and said. As soon as the hostage saw Begonia's appearance, he jumped into the inner room and pulled out the wet nurse's little room. She let her hair down and cried. The interrogator asked her, "How was it?" She cried and said. As soon as the hostage saw Begonia's appearance, he jumped into the inner room and pulled out the wet nurse's little room. By then, the flames had already reached the inner room. The hostage ordered the wet nurse to take the child outside. He immediately went to the bed, took off a quilt and spread it on the floor. He threw several of Haitang's leather jackets hanging there and a piece of jewelry beside the pillow into the quilt and wrapped them into a package. He was dragged out together with a red leather suitcase. There were already many cluttered people rushing around to move boxes and baggage outside. The hostage ran as fast as he could before moving a box and a quilt outside. He turned around and saw Haitang and her fake mother crying. He carried a tent and followed behind. The hostage put down the 2 things and let out a breath. Suddenly he saw a rickshaw passing by, so he stopped the rickshaw, put the box on it, and asked Haitang and a man outside Haitang's house to follow the car. Looking into the clearing, Haitang pointed to the 2 boxes in front of the bed, trembling and crying, "Dash." While floating in the realm of reality and dream, the hostage suddenly heard a roaring sound from behind the bed, and the crackling sound of bamboo and wood. As soon as he opened his eyes, he felt that the room and tent were filled with smoke, and he couldn't breathe out. He knew something was wrong, so he picked up Haitang hard and put her clothes away. The hostage said to her in a commanding voice, because the one with the fewest customers in this group is Haitang. Now there is only one hostage and another old outpost. The person who served at that time has now run out of money, and I heard that he doesn't come to Haitang very often. The hostage is also leaving at the end of the year. At the end of the year, when money is most needed, Haitang was afraid that she would not have any customers. Thinking of this, the hostage couldn't help but worry about Haitang. At nearly 2 o'clock, the fake mother closed the door and went out, and Haitang's hostess took off his clothes and went to sleep. Because she was so absorbed, she didn't know that her hostage walked up behind her. The hostage didn't bother her either. He stood silently behind her. After 3 or 5 minutes, a man in his mid-40s with a thin face and a red nose approached Haitang and asked her, Dash. It turns out that Hezhu and Bitao's room is outside, separated by 2 patios from Juhua and Sueyun's room, so the fire is not big and they don't need to move. The hostage was relieved after hearing this and went out to look for Begonia in the open space. When the hostage arrived in the open space, he saw Haitang Jean standing there blankly. Before he finished speaking, Haitang's fake mother also fell in from the door, crying and saying, Dash. Chrysanthemum's room is connected to mine. I didn't take anything out, it was completely burned. Bitao and Hezhu have already gone outside. We will keep their things here. If they are burned down, we will move them for her. Don't worry, Mr. Yu. Begonia, it's not good, get up quickly, get up quickly. There is nothing. My little baby, where's the little baby? Where is our little child? Haitang was surprised when he asked. When she saw it was him, she pointed at the wet nurse with a smile and said, Look. Where do you put your valuables? Are you shocked? Don't be in a hurry. Put on your pants and clothes first. I'm here for everything else. It doesn't matter. Don't be busy. Because there was no wind that day and there were many people fighting the fire had already been extinguished when the hostage came out of the alley. There was already a glimmer of light in the east, and the sound of roosters' crow could be heard in several places. The hostage braved the cold early morning air alone and walked step by step from the gray, dark, and cold streets to the North Gate city. His mind was confused by the nighttime pleasures and the commotion when moving fires. He felt that his thoughts were very mixed, but in this mixed thoughts, he saw the body of a man in his 40s with a red nose merged with Haitang's short, gray body, floating in front of his eyes. The lonely sadness he felt in the amusement park was mixed with a kind of regret, and enveloped his whole heart. 7. The next day, it suddenly started to rain again in the cold sky. Ni Longan caught a cold and was still sleeping in bed. The hostage ran to Longan's room early in the morning and told him about the fire last night. He also sighed. He said, Sueyun is so unfortunate. It's a pity that I'm sick again and can't see her. And I don't have any money around me now. I can't do anything for her. That afternoon, the hostage went to the city in the rain to take a look. Lu and Ban had only burned the 2 houses of Juhua and Sueyun and half of Haitang's house. Haitang's room had been repaired with wooden boards. Cover it up, Begonia family. Already moved in and settled in. The hostage wanted to ask about Sueyun's whereabouts, but Haitang's fake mother only said she didn't know and refused to tell the hostage. When the hostage sat for a while and came out, he met Bitao. Bitao blushed, smiled and said to her husband. Jifu sat silently for a long time, then slowly comforted her and said, Dash. The hostage ran forward and grabbed her and said, Dash. The hostage looked around her and felt that there was not even a mirror box for combing her hair, so he asked her. The hostage continued. The hostage opened the bag and saw that there were still 7 or 8 bills inside, but he gave it to her and said, Dash. I felt like I couldn't say the second sentence, and my nose felt a little sore. When Sueyun saw her hostage, she started crying again. After the fake prostitutes sitting around dispersed, Sueyun cried intermittently and said, Dash. She begged for mercy, and then her hostage asked her where Sueyun lived. She led the hostage into a room that looked like a pigsty at the entrance of the alley. A damp, dark, 5-foot-long hut was filled with fake female prostitutes comforting Sueyun. Sueyun, her hair disheveled and her eyes red and swollen from crying, sat between them. The hostage went in and called out. She cried again and shook her head and said, And, what else? I have more than 80 yuan of banknotes, all of which were burned in the box. Please keep it and keep it as pocket money for now. Do you have any other customers who can help you? Sueyun. I want to pay 50 yuan tomorrow, you pay 50 yuan, and I pay 50 yuan to give it to her. Teach her how to make some changes of clothes. After class in the second half of the day, I plan to go to the city to see her again. I have moved all Haitang's things for her, so the loss will probably not be much. There are 1 or 2 other guests, all of whom are as poor as me. It's just that Longan has been sick these days and can't come to see you. But I have discussed it with him, and I think he and Su Mingxian can always help you. If you say such words again, I will bite your mouth again. Do you have any pocket money now? Didn't you get sick last night? Master you, how is that good? Now there's not even a betting left. The hostage comforted her, agreed to send 50 yuan tomorrow, and then walked back to the school. 8. Jesus Christmas is approaching. The rest of 1921 there are not many days left. It will be sunny or rainy for several days. The cold sky was filled with gray and black stratus clouds. The climate this year is said to be warmer than in previous years, but the dead trees and electric poles near the legal and political college outside City A are already trembling in the cold wind. The atmosphere in Jifu's school became tense due to examination issues and staff retention issues. The students made a request to the principal Su Mingxian, saying that several teachers of such and such should go and several teachers of such and such should be retained. They said it very forcefully. The hostess was hired by Principal Lu. Teacher. And next year I have to go to Japan to submit my graduation thesis, so when students come to stay, they are really in trouble. After hearing the hostage's earnest words of farewell, the pure student burst into tears in front of the hostage. The hostage's depressed heart was also moved by him. But in the end, the hostage finally said to him, these thoughts of self-injury and self-mourning, and his desire to satisfy his own sentimental embrace, are of course more exaggerated than the facts. Jifu raised his glass again and drank a full cup, but this time he said to Tsueyun. The hostage looked at Haitang's stupid look. Compared with Bitao's liveliness, Heju's charm, and Tsueyun's sophistication, she felt even more pitiful. After drinking a few glasses of boring wine, the hostage invited Haitang to come and talk to her. He sat on a rattan couch and taught Haitang to sit in his arms. He took 3 $10 bills, gently stuffed into her bag. He pinched her little but once, and when he was about to kiss her and walk away, the mean face with the red nose suddenly appeared in front of his eyes again. The hostage said quietly to her ear, you should go back first. He stood up and walked back to the table. Haitang sat for a while and then left. The hostage escorted her to the door of the room, hoping that she would turn around and take a look, but the stupid Haitang kept walking out. The hostage's face turned red for a moment, and he was extremely angry. But the hostess, who was very timid and very vain, only smiled reluctantly, walked out of the class alone, and walked back to the school on the cold and windy long street. He was originally sulky, but because he wanted to taste the feeling of broken love, he deliberately did not sit in the car. Walked towards the north gate on the deserted street. As he walked, he thought about. Bitao immediately recovered from her childlike state of sadness. After the violinist came in, Bitao asked what kind of opera was being performed. The hostess shook his head and said, dash. After Haitang left, the hostage suddenly became very interested. After drinking 2 or 3 glasses of wine in succession, he said to Bitao with red eyes. One Saturday night, the hostage got drunk and went to Luhiban with Longan and Fengshe. By that time, Tsueyun's room was also repaired. Burning opium cigarettes and gossiping, it's already 12 o'clock. The hostage wanted to sleep with Haitang one more night, so he told him that he would not go back tonight. After Longan and Fengshe left, Haitang's fake mother hurriedly said to her husband. The school exams are also over. The students had all gone home, but Jifu had to stay a few days late because he had not finished reading the test papers. It was agreed that Longan would take a boat to Shanghai in 3 days. Everyone agreed, but Bitao still stared blankly at the hostage. The hostage suddenly said to Bitao. Among colleagues, because we may not be able to meet again next year, everyone takes turns inviting drinks, which has been in my hostess's heart these past few days. Filled with a touch of detachment. On the night before leaving, he always felt that Haitang people were still loyal and that what happened that night was all the fault of the fake mother. Even though I know that the most ruthless people in the world are prostitutes, and even though I know that Haitang still has a guest with whom she has a child. But the hostess, who is weak by nature, feels that it is too heartless not to go like this. Moreover, the pure Bitao like Wu Qixing would always say goodbye to her no matter what. After we say goodbye this time, it is very unclear whether we will see each other again in this life. Even if we can see each other again, we don't know when. So that night, the hostess made a treat and invited Longan, Fengshe, Bitao, Heju, Tsueyun and Haitang to have dinner at the small Penglai restaurant. After saying a few words, Tsueyun shed tears, and everyone in the room fell silent. Wu Fengshe felt that the silent air was not oppressive, so he said to the interrogator, dash. There was one student who was particularly close to his hostess. Everyone recommended him to come and stay several times, but his hostage only said some sad words. There was one student who was particularly close to his hostess. Everyone recommended him to come and stay several times, but his hostage only said some sad words. After making an appointment with him, he told him in a nonchalant way that he could no longer stay. Even an ugly person like Haitang doesn't want me anymore. Ah. I am really the loneliest person in the world. I have become the loneliest person in the world. It's not difficult to promise you to come again, but even if I promise you now, it will be useless if you can't come next year. Let's not discuss the issue of staying or leaving for now. Sueyun, you are really terrible. Married. Men tend to die early. This time, you were burned in the fire, but... Sueyun, we age very easily. I said, Sueyun, don't blame me, it's better to follow someone earlier. Bitao, I really love you, I really love your childlike look. I hope you don't take your family too lightly. If you can, please keep your innocence until you grow old. Because of Haitang, I can't see you more, which is a very uncomfortable thing in my heart. But the impression you left on me is deeper than anything else. If you want to remember people you can't forget, then you are one of them. After I return to Shanghai this time, I don't know if I can meet my good friend named Wu. If I meet him, I will definitely tell him your story. Do you still remember the friend I told you about that night? Bitao, are you crazy? Sing opera. We will be less and more apart. Tonight should be a little happier. Let's ask Bitao to sing some plays. I don't know, you can sing it yourself. I'm very sorry for tonight, Haitang has to go somewhere else. Bai Tao thought for a while and sang a piece of Beating the Stick Out of the Box, which was exactly the piece that the hostess had heard at the entertainment party. The hostage heard her sing a line and walked up to the window and sat down. He listened to her sad a cappella and looked out the window at the dark night, feeling an inexplicable sadness suddenly well up in his heart. He didn't know why, but he felt very sad tonight after listening to Bitao finish singing. He drank a few glasses of wine carelessly, said goodbye to Bai Tao, He Zhu,